I had an interesting childhood. I grew up in a very poor section of Los Angeles, and I was in the ghetto living there. And it was very interesting because the entire theme of my family's reality was lack. And I grew up with that. I grew up with a lot of abuse, physical, sexual, emotional abuse, constantly, and from certain members of the different families. And it's interesting because part of that left me with this nagging sense of wrongness my whole life. And so I got to a place where I was doing a lot of spiritual searching in my late 20s and was trying to find, I knew there had to be something else. My entire point of view was, if there isn't something else, why am I here? And yet, even in the middle of abuse, when I was a kid, in the middle of having my body quite literally being beaten by people with belts, I remember thinking it doesn't have to be this way. There is something else possible. And so fast forward to my late 20s, where I wasn't particularly great at anything. I did pretty well in school. I was living my life. And I started on this spiritual search, which started opening my eyes to the idea that there were reasons for what happened, but there were also all kinds of other possibilities beyond it. And so what I would do is I'd go to a seminar and I'd be like, oh, yay. By the end of the seminar, I was like, I found the answer. Yay, I'm finally happy. And I wasn't asking for much, I was asking to be happy and have more ease in relationships and with money, wasn't asking for much. And by Wednesday of the following week, it felt like the whole universe caved into my head again. And I was in the same place I was before the weekend. Well, I went to seminar after seminar after seminar after seminar.
And I think
And
that this can be quite the path for anyone who's seeking spiritual enlightenment. We're almost looking for the bypass that's going to save us from our pain. So we'll grab onto any concept, any quote, any guru that could potentially help us bypass this extreme discomfort. Would you agree?
well, I would. And within that, there's a truth with a lie attached, in that those of us that are seekers, and not everybody is, you know that if you tell your latest discovery to somebody who shuts you down for it, they're not a seeker, they're not interested, you're now crazy. But for those of us that are seekers, we do this because we know there is something else possible.
Let's fast forward into the realms of what current society considers middle age. So the life expectancy has certainly increased with science and medicine and evolution, and but we are seeing a phenomena of, we talk a lot about women on my show, so this one's like dedicated to the boys, that 40, 45, 50, that moment perhaps that you experienced in your 30s, where life catches up with you, disappointments catch up with you, a significant event triggers that questioning of, who am I, where am I going, why is this all that I am? You must see a lot of people in your clinical work, but I'd love for you to share with me, I guess, from a scientific perspective, why this timing seems to be significant, and what are some of the catalysts that can trigger this moment of like, there has to be more.
Yeah, well, so let me start here and see where else we go. But it's there's this idea that we're all sold, that if you just do this and this and this, and you do it right, and you do it better than anybody else, then you'll be successful. Except most people are never asked, what is success for you, and how do we help you get there? There's this idea in society and our families and whatever we interact with, of what success is supposed to be. And my sense is the people that get to the midlife crisis point in their lives are people who truly desire something different than the norm. And most of them, here's the funny part, there's this idea of the revolution of rising expectations, which is, if you're downtrodden continuously, you never know the difference. But if you get a little bit of yumminess, you get a little bit of freedom, that's when you revolt. And my sense is, what happens is, the people that are going through this, they get almost or all of everything that they were told would make them happy and successful. And they
Yeah.
wake up one day and go, is this all there is? Are you kidding me? And like, what, this does not fulfill, and it's only, and what is sad and ironic and also a little funny, if you're willing to have a sense of humor about it, is they never looked at that for 50 years. They just bought the lie. They bought the story. If you just do this and this and this and do it well, you're going to be successful. And what they don't realize is they've never asked, we talk about what success is, but for most people, and most people don't realize it. So I'm going to say this, and a lot of people will get it, a lot of people won't. But for most people, success is being happy.
I guess the thing that I'm hearing you say is that the midlife crisis, or that epiphany of that there is more, which generally rises somewhere around midlife, um, is this invitation for change. And it's this opportunity to be seen for who you are or who you want to be.
So actually, how do we get there? Is, you actually said it, this is actually an opportunity to pivot if we're willing to recognize it for what it is. And for me, I'm a big fan of asking questions, because I find a question always opens up another doorway of possibilities. And so something like as simple as, what else is possible here that I've never considered? If I were truly creating my life, how would I create it? And if I didn't have to be in resistance to the people in my life to create my life, what would I choose? And something also as simple as what else is possible can change the perspective of everything. It's just what we've been conditioned to do is go into conclusion about what's going on, about how wrong it is, and then try to come up with a better conclusion to get out of it. Now we've got two sets of conclusions that we're living with that don't help anybody. A question truly is like, if you could, lower your walls and barriers and go, what else is truly possible here that I've never considered? What do I know about what's possible that nobody else does? And if I choose that, are my relationships and my connections and my life going to get greater or lesser?
If you find out what's true for you and you're living your life and your impulses are driving you to explode your life as it is because you're seeking, the new or the real version of yourself, it's hard to catch that dopamine train. It really is. I've seen it with gentlemen and with not so gentlemen. And you see this unraveling happening. And so while you're kind of on the field, it's really hard to think strategy.
True story. Well put. But I have to make a caveat there, which is that finding out what is true for you and functioning and living from what is true for you, it doesn't do the explosion of everyone and everything around you. That's a lie that we've also bought, which is why I say asking the questions and being earnest in your request starts to present to you a different space of functioning. And the thing is, so we can either function from the contraction, which is resisting this, resisting our partner, resisting our lives, resisting our job, blah, 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 blah. Or we can start to recognize that we chose all of this.
Well, I absolutely love this conversation, and I feel like it's the tip of the iceberg. In terms of, what we were talking about before is that knowing the possibilities of change, and particularly, given your background and you explained like your really traumatic childhood, is it possible that, if that stuff has been repressed, or you've just, bounded through all of other life's complications, and then you find yourself kind of waking up to the trauma and the abuse, that is the midlife crisis an opportunity to kind of go back and clear the decks, so that, the next half or the next third or whatever life expectancy you're going to have is free from that mental loop and that I don't know what you called it before, the script that we buy from other people.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That's the invitation
Mm,
that is on order.
mm.
And 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 if we'll approach it from that perspective, we can actually have a sense of gratitude for it, because on the one hand, we can look at it as showing us everything that we have chosen that isn't what we would truly like to choose, and we're young enough to do something different. How did we get so lucky that we're not getting to this at 80? You know, I'm
Mm.
so grateful I got to it at 30. And the thing is about changing it is it's going to be a work in progress. And if you take the invitation, what you can have in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years
Mm.
is beyond anything you could imagine, anything you can predict, anything you would expect, because it's where we truly get in touch with what's true for us. And if we do that, our relationships get greater, money gets easier, we like ourselves a lot more, we have a lot more fun, like everything starts to fall into place. The reason so much doesn't fall into place for people is because they started out at moment one, picking up on, plagiarizing, if you will,
Plagiarizing,
mommy's
that's
and
what you
daddy's
said. Yeah.
realities,
Mm.
and then friends, and then teachers, and then as though somebody else outside of me has an answer that's better than mine. And we can undo it. I help people undo it all the time. And it's so glorious when somebody gets that they can, and their whole connection with reality changes.